This is Rachel Hill with the African American Cultural Garden Sankofa web series. And in this series, we're going to highlight some of the most amazing things about Cleveland. We're going to talk to wonderful people, and you are going to learn about the history of the African American Cultural Gardens. Right now in history, this is so important to us because it looks at the past, the present, as well as the middle passage. So these are key things that people don't know about, don't study, but we're going to talk about it some more. We're going to talk about what does Black history and culture mean to our guests, mean to us, and also what does Black history mean as well as our lives continue to evolve and take place in this society as of now, from our ancestors to present day. One of the reasons why I am a part of this garden is because I believe in it, and I believe in learning about our culture, learning about our history, and also what lies in store for future generations. I actually know the president and the development chair, and once they told me about the garden, which I'd never heard of before, I was so excited to try my hand to see what I can do to help bring this to prominence. We need donations. We need to be able to grow our garden, but we're very excited to present this series to you. My co-host Kenny Hill, you're going to see some interviews with some movers and shakers in the city of Cleveland, very important people, and learn about them, and you're going to learn about the garden as well. We hope you stay tuned. Enjoy the show. This is Rachel Hill with the African American Cultural Garden Sankofa web series. And today we have a special guest. All of our guests are special, but this guest is definitely an inspiration to us all. We have the Reverend Dr. Otis Moss, who is right now enjoying his retirement, but he is always open to speaking opportunities. And one of the reasons why we have him here today is obviously we know that our garden is very important, but Doctor will talk about his journey and path in civil rights, which has cultivated into what part of what the garden is about today. And how are you doing today, Doctor?
Just fine. And you?
I am doing so well. Thank you for joining us here today and taking time out of your schedule to do so. So since you have stepped down and retired, what are you up to right now?
Keeping busy and working at home and still trying to do whatever there is to be done with whatever strength I have left.
Okay. And for those who are not familiar with you, your journey or your path, can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, I thought you were going to do that, but it's been, in some respects, a long journey from a sharecropper farm in Georgia to Morehouse College to seminary to further studies, and finally to Cleveland, Ohio in 1975, where I served at the Olivet Institutional Baptist Church for 33 years. In my activist years in civil rights, and I consider myself still active, I worked closely with Dr. King, was a member of his board, and he performed our wedding ceremony. He, his family was really a part of our extended family, and that friendship still remains. And I also served for a number of years as chair of the board of Reverend Jackson's organization, People United to Serve Humanity, and now Rainbow Push National Coalition, and served for 10 years as the chair of the board of Morehouse College, which is my alma mater. I'll stop there.
Because I always say people can tell their stories a little bit better than I can. So we are privileged to hear those words from you to tell it the way it needs to be told. Can you tell us, what does Black history and culture mean to you?
One, that is our foundation. It's our lifeline. And it's our past, it's our present, and our future. If we do not know, preserve, protect, and pass on our heritage, our culture, our spiritual roots, uh, and the undying drumbeat of liberation. If we do not uh, pass that on to our children and to their children from generation to generation, we are then cooperating with genocide. And we must do this. We must preserve, protect, and pass on our heritage, our history, our hope, that from generation to generation. And if we do not do that, we are contributing to our extinction, to our own genocide. And we must tell that story in many ways. Did I lose you?
No, I'm here.
All
I'm
right, we
hanging on
must
your
tell
every
that,
word.
excuse me, we must tell that story in many ways. One, person to person, family to family, institution to institution, church, community, in writing, in photographs, in pictures, in narratives, in parks, memorials, and every facet of human existence. Everything we touch ought to be a testimony of our history, our culture, our life, our work, our relationship with God, and our love for justice, freedom, liberation, equal rights, voting rights, and every piece of reality that serves and saves humanity. It's up to us to keep that, in the words of Jesse Jackson, hope alive. It's up to us, in the words of Dr. King, to build that beloved community. It's up to us to build parks, playgrounds, memorials, institutions, studies, art, works, songs, and various forms of cultural expressions in order that we do not become extinct. Because there are forces in every generation dedicated to our destruction and not our survival. And we are facing that at this very moment as we face the elections of 2020. And when we talk about the African American garden, think about that African American garden. What is a garden? A garden is a place where fruit and vegetables grow. A garden is a place where trees are planted and flowers bloom. A garden is a place where stones and structures and art all speak their own language. And that's what we are looking at when we talk about the African American cultural garden. Why do you visit museums? Why do you visit memorials? Why do you go to concerts? You go there to be inspired, to be enriched, to learn and to grow. A garden is a place of growth, a place of life, a place of memory, a place of meditation, a place of inspiration. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about the African American cultural garden. I will stop there.
Well, that was going to be my next question as well. the garden mean to you, but you actually answered that for me. So I thank you so much. And one of the things is I do want to thank you as well for your civil rights work too. A lot of our history and culture is being lost, and that's amongst the youth. And I say is that the seeds planted 400 years ago still bear negative fruit on other trees. And there's this huge disconnect, especially with the younger crowd. And, you know, when I look at you, I think of civil rights and I think about you preaching. But unfortunately, a lot of our youth say they do not plan on voting. And I'm like, you know, there are so many people who died for the right to have you to vote. And the greatest power you have is to take theirs away. Why do you think they don't want us to vote? Each vote counts, and that's important. That's how they stay in power. That's how they stay in control. Because I was speaking with a friend the other day, and they also had said that they were talking to some younger guys who said they don't care about us, and a government will not work for you until it starts to look like you. So they don't understand the importance of voting. And yes, if you don't vote, you leave other people to make those decisions for you. Can you tell us why you think, especially some of the younger people, are so disconnected from voting, what it does, and what was done for us to even have that opportunity?
One, let me be personal for a moment.
Please, please do, sir.
I have constantly told the story over and over and over of my father growing up in Georgia, out in the rural district. As a child, I remember quite well my father walking 18 miles one day trying to vote. He went to 3 different places. The first place, they told him, "You're at the wrong voting place." And they designated where the right place was. That was 6 miles away. He walked 6 more miles and they told him, "You're at the wrong place. You must go to the Rosemont School." Well, he knew where that school was, so he walked to that school. Another 4 or 5 miles, walking. And when he arrived at the third place, they said to him, "Boy, you are a little late. The polls just closed." Fast forward 3 or 4 years later, 4.5 years later to be exact, my father was killed in an automobile accident. He never got the chance to vote. Now, I participated in the Selma March and the struggle for the right to vote. So did my wife. But as great as the voting rights bill was and is, although it's been weakened, that bill could not dig up my father's body, put life into his limbs, and a ballot in his hand. He was denied forever the right to vote. So I vote in his memory. I vote because it is the ticket to democracy. I vote because I want my children and my children's children to see and know that I am voting. And now some people do not have that kind of witness in their lives. You have to be taught. It has to be shown. It has to be illustrated. It has to be demonstrated. Uh, and that illustration and that demonstration must become so much a part of your inhaling and exhaling, your breathing, your walking, your talking, and your feeling, that no one has to shake you and shame you. But because you have been taught, you will vote because you know This is the only way to build and maintain a democracy and protect your rights. You vote in memory of generations who gave their lives and risked their lives, and you vote in spite of all of the stumbling blocks and the discouragements. And you vote for yourself, for your community, for your children, and your children's children. And until we digest that, believe it and act upon it, anything will throw you off. But if you are steeped in and anchored in that kind of conviction, nothing can stop you.
What are some of the suggestions that you have for people to be more involved in the process besides voting if they might want to run for office? Because a lot of like stumbling blocks for people are the money to campaign and stuff like that. So any advice you have on how people can be the change if they are possibly pursuing office?
Number one, it requires study and teaching. And that teaching must take place in our homes primarily, in our schools, in our churches, and in our communities. We have to be taught and we have to teach. It does not come automatically. It doesn't even come because other people are doing it. It comes because you are convinced and convicted, and you know your story. You know the story of Rosa Parks and the story of Selma and the story of lynching and the story of what the Constitution says and what it does and what it should say and what it should do. You know the story of Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth and Frederick Douglass. You know the story of Martin Luther King Jr. and Thurgood Marshall and Rosa Parks. And when you digest all of that, nobody can keep you from voting. You will risk your life in order to vote, but that does not come in an automatic way. It comes in a developmental, teaching and teachable way, and we digest it in such a way that nobody, no one can hold us back, or we spend our lives struggling and protesting and fighting to gain, keep, and protect that right. I maintain that it must be taught, it must be digested, it must become a passion with us. And we must also see the relationship between the ballot box and the bread box. Here we are, for the first time in memory, watching government forces rip up mailboxes from the ground to keep you and to keep me from voting. So from the mailbox to the ballot box to the bread box, all are related. If I do not vote, my behavior is signing a death warrant against myself and my children and my neighbors.
I don't think you can put it more eloquently than that. And then my final question for you would be, what are your thoughts about the protests now compared to the protests that you were involved in during the civil rights era? Has anything changed with how this country treats us? And we see the same things now that a lot of us were not able to see back then because we weren't born. And I'm just like, what is the difference at this point? There doesn't appear a difference to me, because you have people begging and pleading for Black humanity, and then you have people who are against it. So I'm just like, you're at a loss of words how we have not progressed, and we are at the same place where we are today. So what are your thoughts about the protests right now and what you went through?
Number one, you never protest one time and say it's finished. Just like you don't stop growing or learning or thinking or preparing. That is continuing from generation to generation. Yes, we marched, we protested, we went to jail, but that does not mean that nobody else has to do that. We have to do that from generation to generation. Uh, I can go to the doctor for myself, but I cannot go to the doctor for my grandchildren. They must develop a sense of health and health development and protection. So every generation has to be prepared for the demonstrations and the protests that are needed in that hour. Human beings do not become perfected in one area, in one era, to the extent that they do not need to keep moving in the next generation. So yes, we marched in Selma. We got a voting rights bill. The next generation has to, one, use that voting rights bill and protect it. And if the next generation does not protect it, it will be taken away as we see it right now. One, it has been weakened, and two, there are forces operating every day to kill that bill, to kill the Affordable Health Act. So the victory you win in your life has to be protected and enhanced and enlarged by the next generation. What Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth did in their generation was great, but they passed the baton to us, and we must work while our day is before us and pass it on to the next. So just because we march doesn't mean that the next generation does not have to march. Just because you protect your health does not mean that your children will not have to protect their health. It is a continuing responsibility. We never finish marching. We never finish protesting. And we've got to protect that which has been won and go on to win more victories, even greater victories.
Absolutely. I think kind of the younger generation, we've dropped the ball, so to say, because we got very comfortable. And as people realize that civil rights was given to people through the court system, it's being dismantled right now currently as well, with the lifetime appointments of the federal judicial judgeships that have been given to certain people. So as civil rights has been given us to the courts, we can see civil rights begin to erode through the courts as well. So we got too comfortable and we wasn't paying attention, but you continue to inspire us to fight, because we got to pick that baton back up and make sure we finish the race. And we see that this is a 400 years race, and we will continue to have to run this, unfortunately. But I just want to thank you so much for your time, your words of retrospect, inspiration, knowledge. Thank you so much, because you are just so important, and thank you for your sacrifices as well to fight for people like me to have the opportunities that I do. So this is Rachel Hill. And before we leave out, I'm sorry, Dr. Moss, how can people contact you if they want to be involved? Are you on social media or anything like that?
No, I'm turning that over to your generation. You know how to use this media and you do it well. So use
Okay.
it to the fullest.
Okay.
Uh, at 85, I can't quite keep up as I might have at 25,
Okay.
but I'm not giving up.
Okay.
So keep on keeping on. Use every legitimate, spiritual, moral, civic, and nonviolent means at your disposal. The fight is not over. Even when we die, it's not over. We must die with the staff in our hand. We must die marching for a better day. Thank you and keep on keeping on.
Thank you, Dr. Moss. And this is Rachel Hill with the African American Cultural Gardens Sankofa web series. And hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you so much. Sow a seed and watch us grow.
Hello, my name is Courtney A. Barton, and I'm the Program Director for Arts and Culture and Racial Equity Initiatives at the Cleveland Foundation. The Cleveland Foundation is proud to sponsor the Association of African American Cultural Gardens Black History and Culture webcast series. Culture is the way that we interact and make sense of the world and express ourselves. It is also an inherent human need and a basic human right enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Too often, the story of Black culture is framed as one of deprivation, but I would like to talk about the ways in which Black culture has always thrived. Take, for instance, Adinkra symbols. Now, the symbol of the African American Culture Garden is an Adinkra symbol, Sankofa bird, which is a bird that is depicted as flying forward while looking backwards. Adinkra symbols are an ancient West African writing system originating in a part of the continent that is also known for its ironworkers. Now, when these ironworkers were kidnapped from their ancestral lands and brought to this continent to help build this country, they often embedded Adinkra symbols in the iron that they wrought. So if you ever have the opportunity to visit an antebellum or colonial building, take a close look at the wrought iron you may find in gates and fences. Rather than a series of decorative shapes, it's often Adinkra symbols you will be looking at. And though you may not understand the meaning of each individual symbol, the overall message to take is that our ancestors survived and retained their and our culture and managed to create great beauty in the midst of the most adverse circumstances. Hi.
Welcome back, viewers. I'm KD Hale. This is the Black History and Culture webcast series sponsored by the Association of African American Cultural Gardens. Today, we are so pleased to have with us Councilman Kevin Conwell. Councilman Conwell, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Outstanding. So, Councilman, what our program is modeled to do is to educate, inspire, inform, and empower, and have interesting interviews so our viewers can kind of learn their story and what they're doing and where their heart is as far as African American history. So would you begin by telling our viewers about your story? Councilman Conwell, a brief summary of where you started and how you got to be where you are.
Well, you know, I started in the Glenville community, the home of the mighty Tarblooders.
Tarblooded Nation.
Tarblooded Nation. And I remember I was running and one day, and this nun named Sister Joseph Therese stopped me. She said, "Stop, young man, stop, young man." She said, "What do you want to do? What do you want to be?" So I said, "Sister, I want to be the greatest musician. I want to be the greatest drummer in the whole wide world." So she said, "If you come and you take and you help me out in the neighborhood," she needs someone to help her out to give back in the neighborhood, that you know, with food drives and things like that, that I'll get you free drum lessons. We have a drum teacher here named John McCoy. So I'm like, "Good, sister, good, fine,
Yes.
fine." So At Martini Ports, it was located on Adams at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to help the sister, and then I met my wife. She was in there working too. We didn't become my wife, Yvonne Conwell.
Wow.
She was 8 and I was 12 years old, and we would get back to the neighborhood and help out, and that ended up sticking with you, man, because you end up watching what's going on, giving back and helping. And then when I went to away to Kent State University, one of my majors is in Pan African Studies.
Wow.
One of my majors is in Pan African Studies. So I remember Dr. Crosby telling me, Doctor, I always want to spew out some Black history. And he told me, he said, you know why you're able to talk Black history, Conwell? I said, why? He said, because you're talking about Frederick Douglass, you're talking about Vasey's, you're talking about Nat Turner and those guys, because they were doing things.
Yes.
I want you to do things when you get out of here and give back to the community.
Yes.
So he laid that on my heart. So every time I like to do things. I like outcome measures.
Mm-hmm.
It means a lot to me.
You're all about activism and solutions.
Mm-hmm. About activism.
Solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So that's wonderful. And what schools did you go to?
Well, of course, I graduated from high school at Glenville.
Yes.
We went to Miles Stennis, Michael White now.
Yes.
And then FDR, and graduated from Glenville High School, and went over to Kent State University. Then from Kent State University, went to Chancellor and finished my MBA.
Okay.
And went back and picked up my project management certification also, and Six Sigma and all that kind of,
Outstanding.
those kind of good things, man. I love that stuff.
Outstanding. So before we go into our current location, can you tell people how you got involved with council? How did you become a council person? What drove you to become a council person?
Well, I was an activist. I remember helping to pioneer Harvest for Hunger. My wife and I would do food drives all around the city, and it blossomed into a citywide effort.
Mm-hmm.
Supposed to be March and September, and people kept coming back for food, and then one of us got an idea, and we started doing job fairs. So the businesses that was donating food to us, we said, well, why don't you guys start hiring people? They say, that's a good idea. And so we started doing job fairs. Believe it or not, I probably have instituted at least 80 job fairs.
Wow.
At least 80 job fairs, and we would do the job fairs at Glenville High School, Glenville Recreation Center, and you used to get some of the flyers, Kenny.
I did. I remember those flyers.
Glenville YMCA, all around, and we had a program called Job Link, and people would come by and help out, because I believe in putting people to work.
Yes.
And I think it's therapeutic when people work, and the power of work, you keep families together. So I was a job activist.
Yes.
Then we graduated to that and to start helping to pioneer the fatherhood movement in the 90s.
I remember that.
Yeah, you remember that. And it was fathers and families together, and we would go out fishing in the neighborhood, and the goal was to promote father-child bonding, and we would tell the guys the best thing that a father could do for his children is to respect his children's mother, and the fatherhood group blossomed. And I ended up being honored in Washington, D.C. as the National Father of the Year.
Outstanding.
Right, and that was in 2001. And later I became the council member in Ward 9, Glenville council member. So my activity was an activity of activism, food drives, job fairs, fatherhood piece.
Yes.
And I look back at some of these things. They're doing well. The Fatherhood Initiative doing well. Harvest for Hunger, people don't know that I was one of the pioneers. It's doing well also. What I think I mentioned this to you with the fatherhood piece, as well as with the Harvest for Hunger, you have to let it grow wings on its own.
Yes.
And when that happens, other people come in and they grow life into it also. But if you act like it's yours, you can't grow life into it.
Yes.
So what we would do, the wife and I, with the fatherhood piece, we would always take the focus off of us and keep the focus on the mission.
Yes.
So the mission is important, so you look at it, and hopefully it will become everlasting.
Helping people, empowering people. That's so true. So
right.
Thank you for your service and your commitment to activism, solution-oriented.
I'll keep on doing that. That's
no
important.
question. So tell us about the current location where we are, the Cozad Bates.
You know what I want to mention too? And then we'll get into the Cozad
Sure.
Bates. Can I mention that?
Oh, yeah.
Here's a piece that we're doing called Play It Forward Cleveland also. I love this piece.
Okay.
You know, I have a band and we play everywhere for free, all around the county and the city. And we go in, for example, if your organization was doing something with ovarian cancer or breast cancer or 501c3, my band members go in and we play.
What's the name of your band?
Councilman, Onwell, and Footprints. Councilman, Onwell, and
Excellent.
Footprints. And these are some of the baddest guys in the city. I want to say some of the baddest cats in the city.
I've heard them.
They play professional with a lot of different groups. So to get them to come in, we play for free. And then the people there would take the money to give to keep it for their mission.
The charity, right?
The charity,
yes.
instead of paying us. And then God came to me and he said, "This is what I want you to do. You okay, you cool, you know, you think you bad, you cool. I need you to cultivate some children." And so I got together with CMSD and Severance Hall and Marcia over at Inspired Arts, and we put together Play It Forward Cleveland. And with Play It Forward Cleveland, people donate us instruments, drums, violins, guitars, and we take the instruments, they're stored at a secret place, and we have money set aside and we give free music lessons to children. Then the teacher, when it's over with, take the instruments that was donated to us and we repair the instruments also while they go through their lessons. So they have a nice instrument.
Yes.
Instead of someone having a violin laying around at home or whatever, with Play It Forward Cleveland, people donate the instruments, they get a tax write-off, and we take their instrument and we donate it to the children. And this way, Kenny, the kids, music builds self-discipline and it builds good character. Instead of being out in the streets, they're taking the lessons and they have a nice instrument, and that's what God laid in my head. Similar to Harvest for Hunger.
Yeah,
it's similar.
I'm so glad you added that, because music is so transformative, as you know, and I know personally. So that's wonderful, and I'm glad you shared that with our viewers. So talk about the Cozad Bates location that you were asked if we could have our interview here, and I said, let's do it, Councilman.
Man, this is a powerful place. A lot of people don't know about University Circle. Was a hotbed for abolitionists. And abolitionists were good people, man.
Yes.
Good white folks, white folks, abolitionists, great white folks that to help my people, our people, your people, to bondage and to help to liberate us.
Yes.
Like John Brown was a good abolitionist. And Kathleen Crowder from the Preservation Society came to me when I became a councilman. I became your councilman after you voted me in office.
Yes.
And she said, Councilman, you can make this happen. You're free. And she introduced me to Joan Southgate also. We're at 11010 Superior. So I listened. I said, let me study this about the Underground Railroad. So I said, how does white lady know about this? But she gave it to me, and she talked with Joan, and she put us together. And I read the piece. I said, you know what? I'm going to designate this. Because if I designated the Cleveland landmark, they can't raise it.
Okay.
Okay. So you got to take it, but you have to do it through policy and legislation. And so what I read about this area, after the Dred Scott decision, the abolitionists tried to see does a black man have the rights that a free man must respect when he goes into free states. Free states like Indiana was a free state, Ohio, of course, was a free state, Pennsylvania was a free state, New York a free state. Are we truly free people as African Americans? Supreme Court said no. They said no. So then when that happened, slave catchers, they would come up here and catch our people to take them back to the South.
Yes.
So University Circle became a hotbed for abolitionists, and our people called this area Hope.
Hope.
When they got here, they called it Hope. And the last house standing for the untold story was this house right here, the Cozad Bates house. It was Cozad Bates Ford. And at that time, around 1854, University Circle was farmland. And there was another brave soul named John Melvin. He has a book, you can see his book. He was the Harriet Tubman up here, and he helped thousands of our people escape to Canada. And they went to the Old Stone Church. UCI, they're building a road for Joan Southgate, because Joan Southgate did her Harriet Tubman walked,
Yes.
and she started it. She started her walk right from here, from the Kozad Bates House. A remarkable woman.
Outstanding. So we encourage our viewers to do more research on the Kozad Bates House right here in Cleveland, a landmark for our history. So, Councilman Conwell, would you share with us your connection with the African American Cultural Gardens and share with viewers why African American history is important?
Oh, that garden is very, very important. When you look at it, it's the walls of you see it there, of no return.
Yes.
And that could be in countries like Senegal, Ghana, Nigeria, Niger, where our people. It shows when people look at it, they don't know what it is, and it shows how our people went through that wall, and we went through the Middle Passage.
Yes.
To places like Jamaica, where you see Kamala coming from the
Yes.
vice president. Hopefully, she'll be the vice president. Jamaica, they went through that wall, the point of no return, to places like, I'm looking at Haiti is there, Guyana, Puerto Rico, those islands down there. And that shows all of that into our passage up here to the south, places like Alabama, Atlanta, Georgia, all that. If you are wise, you could look at it and you could tell that's from those walls.
Yes.
And then we did the Great Migration up here to places like
To the
Cleveland,
north,
to the
Chicago,
north,
Detroit.
Chicago,
Yes.
Detroit, from there. So we need people to get involved and minister. We need that so our children, it's all about our children. It's all about our children. When you see and you join the African American Cultural Gardens,
No question.
it's not just about us. We live through our children.
Yes.
So when they pass by, they see on the Syrian monument, they see from other countries, but they don't see from our country.
Yes.
I mean, from us.
Yes.
From the African American Cultural Gardens, from our, and that's not good. That's not good at all. So we need people to donate to the African American Cultural Gardens. That's very, very important.
No question. So, Councilman Conwell, thank you for joining us, and that was a great segue because we definitely want people to consider being members of the African American Culture Guards. You can check us out online. You can become a member online. Councilman Conwell, thank you for your service.
Cool beans.
Keep
cool
up the great
beans.
work.
Yes, yes. It's
Ladies
cool.
and gentlemen, back to the African American Culture Gardens History and Culture webcast series on the other side.
Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully you enjoyed this episode and you learned a little bit more about our garden and people in our community. Please sow a seed and watch us grow. You can go to our website to donate, and also our social media links will appear below so you can get caught up on all the updates at the garden and see what we're doing. Please stay tuned for further episodes that you will enjoy in the future. Sow a seed and watch us grow.